You touched on the intuitive eating thing that's coming up quite a lot now, and I think like that's cool and all, but if you're trying to reach peak performance, like nothing about like, would you train intuitively? What do you feel like doing today? I feel like lying on the couch. Like,
I love that. I might have to use that. I'm going to quote you.
yeah,
That is a great way to put it. It's yeah. Would you train intuitively? I don't feel like training today, or I'll do a little bit of this. I'll do maybe the elliptical machine. No, that's not going to make you a better rugby player. I'm
no,
sorry.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, I've heard a lot about intuitive eating, and I think most of the people who say it's for everybody, they don't work with athletes, or they don't work with, you know, other people we think are athletes, whether it's fire, police, combat athletes, the
Yeah,
military. Oh my gosh, where your life is, your job just to stay alive and keep your teammates, so to speak, alive. But they don't work with people like that because I'm sorry, you just can't intuitively eat all the time.
no, and the ones that do intuitively and succeed because they have like they naturally eat enough to perform, whereas the vast majority that fail obviously clearly don't. And
Yeah.
it's something that I've dealt with a lot more now, is the guys that want to put on size and they just can't like wrap their head around how much protein they have to eat. And I think it's like, just because it's so uncommon, compared to their crowd or whatever. But if you're around a whole group of athletes, like you said, like offensive linemen, they've been doing this since they were, like 12 or something. Like they've been eating a lot, and they've been trying to, like, if they're offensive linemen in the NFL, they've been eating it like that much for well over a decade now. So it's normal for them.
Absolutely. Their high school coaches have always been like, just eat anything. And then they learned, hey, I can't eat anything. Like maybe fast food's not the best thing, but they know they have to eat. The other interesting thing I've seen, two interesting points, is when a guy in the NFL who's an offensive lineman gets out of the NFL, most of them drop 40 to 50 pounds pretty easily. Like
Yeah.
they go back to, hey, this is what their natural body weight is. It's very interesting. Um, to see that. And then the other point about intuitive eating is there was a trainer years ago. He said to me about people who may have been like overweight. He goes, Marie, their intuitive eating is what got them here in the first place. So no, we have to like teach them what hunger is,
Yep.
because their version of intuitive eating is not intuitive eating. So I like that point, because I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like, how does that work? You almost have to take them back to those basics and go, no, 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 you don't need to eat at this hour. That's not hunger, you know?
Yeah. And I think I understand the intuitive eating movement, because it's mostly coined by people who have spent some time using MyFitnessPal, tracking their diet, and they're just a little bit like over the neurotic nature that sometimes it needs. But
Oh, yeah.
then, even then, like if I eat intuitively, that just I'm not really eating intuitively. I'm still doing the same thing. I'm just not logging it on MyFitnessPal, but I'm still eating meals thinking, okay, that's about 40 grams of protein. That's probably 60 grams. Like I know what I'm eating, like, because I've done like nearly a decade now of logging my diet. So I know what I'm doing.
Wow. You've done that for a decade straight?
No, I've taken breaks. I've taken many
Okay.
breaks, but but what I'm saying is, even when I take breaks, right, I still know, like, the lessons that I learn every time is like, okay, that how much, like, I know how much, 40 grams of protein looks like with so many different foods, and same thing for bread. I don't know what foods sort of look like they might be really low in calories, but then creep up on you. For example, granola.
Yes. The other thing I like about tracking when talking about is, we always talk calories or macros, but if you track your diet for a couple of days, you can look at it and go, gosh, this person told me to eat more potassium rich foods, and I really don't have many in my diet. I really see that now. Or, yeah, I'm not getting enough calcium rich food. So it with the right, kind of education or training, we can train people that here are some of the foods you need for whatever reason. I mean, I have athletes that have high blood pressure. So I've said, hey, focus on these foods. If they track for a couple of days, they can look and go, I need to do a better job of this. So it's not just looking at calories and macronutrients, but it's looking at those micronutrients as well.
For sure. So you're a big fan of getting your athletes to track?
You know what? I would like some to, and sometimes I do have them track for a couple of days. Many do not. Um, it really depends on the person. Some people absolutely will not do it, or they won't remember. But as I always say, it doesn't need to be anything formal. Just go in the notes section of your phone, write down what you eat, and we can go over it. And that's a lot easier for many of the ones I work with versus the MyFitnessPal or Fat Secret or any of those. They're not going to go to another app, but they might do that, or they might take a picture and send it to me.
Yeah, because I've tried the notes and I've tried just getting people to write it down. But I've often found that even then, people just forget. So sometimes I like the fact that MyFitnessPal is a little bit awkward because it brings it all, as you say, like a lot of, the beauty of tracking isn't that all these numbers have to be perfect and that teaches you to be perfect. The beauty is that is the lesson, the awareness that it teaches you from, like, knowing what your current intake is and what you need.
Yes. And like you said, it's not for everybody. I mean, there's research out there to show that for certain people, logging in MyFitnessPal brings about more disordered eating habits. But that's where, when talking with somebody, we can sit there and go through and distinguish, is this right for them, or is this not a good approach for them, based on their past history?
Have you ever had anyone that you really feel like you need to get to track their food and has just given you so much resistance that you might have broken through, or that you've had to use a different approach?
No, I always go with a different approach. If they're anti tracking, I do think athletes in general are more aware, and male athletes will tend to tell you what they eat. They're not so, we always talk about in research how people don't track accurately and they don't tell you accurately what they eat. You get somebody who's quite overweight and they're like, oh, I only eat 1,200 calories a day, for instance. But I feel like male athletes, they'll sit there and tell you, hey, Maria, I had 8 beers last night. Hey, I had, I didn't just eat a pack of gummy bears. I ate the big pack of gummy bears, like the big one.
Yeah.
Like, they'll tell you those things. They're not ashamed, which I just love. It makes it easier to work with them, because then you have something to work with versus somebody who's hiding what they eat.
Right, and a disconnect with the guys that know what they're eating and are telling you isn't that they're lying to themselves about how much they're eating. They just don't really know what the problem is with, like, or how much that food is in, like, a caloric value or a
or if they just don't know
value.
how to stop it. Sometimes it's, hey, I feel like I need all this. Why? And like, I had this conversation the other day with someone, and I said, you know what you need to do is you need to eat more calories earlier in the day. Your metabolism is pretty fast. Let me tell you why you're craving sugar. It's probably part habit. You're used to it. You like sugar. But it's also, you're not eating enough during the day. So the quickest way to get your body fueled and get it energy, if you're craving something, is through sugary foods.
Yeah. I think it goes to show just that, the awareness that tracking brings, the just I say tracking, and it doesn't necessarily mean on MyFitnessPal, but logging your diet, like having an idea of what you're eating. Yeah, it shows habits. Habits like that are really amazing. I found that as well. I found that, I've had a few athletes that have really struggled to get the right amount of protein in, and I realized, oh, right, you're not having any snacks in the day, so all you've got to cram in, minimum 2,800 calories or so in 3 meals. That's difficult.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then the other thing, I found, which I thought was amusing at first when I was working with the Falcons, that I had many players because I would eat breakfast with them. And I'm like, okay, your breakfast has like egg whites and spinach and stuff. And you weigh, some of them more than twice what I weigh. And look what I'm eating. Look how many more calories I eat. So it was a visual. And so they could sit there and go, okay, I'm, lifting, I'm going to practice, I'm going through walkthroughs. And here's this female, quite a bit smaller than I am, who's eating significantly more calories than food. I'm like, you can't get by on egg whites and spinach. That's not going to do.
And then it gets to a point where, like you say with the sugar, like they just get so hungry. Like I found that people, it happens on both sides. Guys that want to put on weight tend to consistently, like, struggle to overeat, and then when they, one day they'll just give up and eat nothing, versus the guys that want to lose weight, which will tend to undereat, and then they'll get, one day they'll give up and binge.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, you can't undereat that much because you will binge.
Yeah.
And like you said, you've got to, if you just don't eat, that's not a solution either, because you'll crave sugar. It's just not going to work.